Chaos has erupted in Parliament just moments ago as Keir Starmer, under immense pressure, lost control in a fiery reaction to a devastating blow from his own MPs. A no-confidence vote has been officially launched against him, all triggered by a shocking Brexit U-turn that has shattered promises and ignited fury across party lines. What started as a strategic reset has exploded into a full-blown political crisis. Starmer's grip on power is slipping fast, and the consequences could reshape the future of Britain's Brexit saga forever. Keir Starmer's leadership is now hanging by a thread after an unprecedented revolt unfolded in Westminster. For months, Starmer had tried to position himself as the defender of Brexit promises, assuring voters he would honour the mandate to take back control. But everything changed with a secretive and controversial deal recently signed off behind closed doors. A deal that now threatens to unravel everything Brexit stood for. It wasn't just a misstep, it was a full betrayal. MPs from both Labour and Tory benches, furious at what they see as a sellout, united in launching a no-confidence vote. This rare cross-party rebellion signals a level of dissatisfaction unseen in years. Behind the scenes, the anger boiled over. Starmer's reaction was explosive, a mix of desperation and rage. According to insiders, the Labour leader erupted in Zeke's Eye, a closed-door meeting, accusing dissenters of treachery and threatening political reprisals. But the backlash is relentless and growing louder by the hour. For many MPs, this isn't just a political battle. It's a fight for the soul of the nation and their own political survival. The deal in question hands Brussels powers once promised to be relinquished forever. From fishing rights to judicial oversight, from youth mobility schemes to food standards, the deal locks Britain back into EU control under the guise of progress. The atmosphere in Parliament is tense and volatile. The no-confidence vote isn't just a symbolic gesture. It could topple the leadership and trigger a seismic shift in the UK's political landscape. Starmer's supporters scramble to contain the fallout, but the cracks are visible and widening. Opposition leaders, especially Nigel Farage and Reform UK, are seizing the moment, framing Starmer as the ultimate Brexit betrayer. The public's patience is wearing thin. In coastal towns devastated by foreign fishing fleets and communities feeling abandoned, protests are already being planned. Starmer's carefully crafted image of steady leadership is crumbling as voters feel increasingly betrayed. This crisis comes at a time when the UK's economy is fragile, public trust in politicians is low, and Brexit itself remains a deeply divisive issue. The stakes could not be higher. As the no-confidence vote gains momentum, the question on everyone's mind is simple but terrifying. Can Starmer survive this political earthquake, or is the end of his leadership inevitable? The fallout will ripple far beyond Westminster, impacting everything from trade relations to national unity. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. The unfolding political turmoil surrounding Keir Starmer has rapidly intensified as the no-confidence vote moves closer to fruition, revealing deep fractures not only within the Labour Party, but across the entire UK political landscape. Starmer's so-called historic reset of UK-EU relations has been met with overwhelming hostility, especially from those who once supported him under the assumption that Brexit's mandate would be upheld without compromise. This deal, shrouded in secrecy and strikingly at odds with the promises made during the Brexit campaign, effectively returns key aspects of British sovereignty to Brussels control, infuriating MPs and voters alike. The backlash is not limited to the opposition benches. Within Labour itself, the sense of betrayal is palpable. Party insiders speak in hushed tones of a leadership that has lost touch with its grassroots and traditional supporters, many of whom feel abandoned by a leader who appears willing to concede fundamental Brexit principles for political expediency. The notion that the youth mobility scheme, allowing EU citizens unrestricted access to live and work in the UK, is a benign policy, has been soundly rejected by critics who see it as a backdoor to reinstating free movement, a cornerstone of the Brexit rejection. This perception has widened the gulf between Starmer and his base, fueling internal dissent and complicating efforts to maintain party unity amid escalating external pressure. The implications of the EU fishing rights extension until 2038 have ignited particular fury in coastal constituencies, where local economies are closely tied to the fishing industry, and long-standing grievances over foreign trawlers' impact on British waters have been politically charged for years. The Scottish Fishermen's Federation's public condemnation of the deal as a horror show reflects a broader sense of disillusionment among fishing communities, who had expected post-Brexit policies to restore their livelihoods rather than undermine them. These localised flashpoints have translated into national outrage, with protests already being organised in towns such as Grimsby, Hull and Plymouth. The political ramifications are severe, as Brexit voters traditionally loyal to Labour are now publicly pledging to abandon the party, driving voters toward Reform UK and other Eurosceptic alternatives. This shift threatens to redraw electoral maps, particularly in regions that were crucial to Labour's past successes. Conservative MPs, meanwhile, have seized on the chaos, amplifying their criticism of Starmer's leadership and accusing him of orchestrating the biggest sellout of British industry in recent history. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's rare public condemnation underscores the gravity of the situation, as he frames the deal as a catastrophic surrender that will result in low growth, low productivity, and high regulation for the UK economy. Beyond the immediate political fallout, the deal's broader implications pose significant challenges for Britain's autonomy in trade, legal affairs and defence. The reintroduction of EU judicial oversight via the European Court of Justice is particularly contentious, undermining one of the central promises of Brexit to free the UK from EU legal entanglements. This development has been portrayed by critics as an erosion of British sovereignty, further alienating nationalists and those who championed Brexit as a reclaiming of self-governance. Similarly, the alignment of defence cooperation with EU ambitions for a European army has sparked fears among hawks on both sides of the aisle, who view such moves as diluting the UK's independent military posture and entangling it in broader continental defence initiatives that may not serve British interests. The framing of the deal as an economic win, such as the claim that it saves travellers 10 minutes at airport passport control, has been widely dismissed as a superficial distraction from the substantial concessions embedded in the agreement. This messaging failure has only intensified public scepticism and mistrust toward the government's handling of Brexit. The internal dynamics within the Labour Party have grown increasingly volatile as Starmer's leadership faces unprecedented challenges. Reports of closed-door confrontations reveal a leader struggling to command authority and rally support amid growing dissent. The threat of deselections against rebellious MPs, branding them as traitors, highlights a fracturing party desperate to maintain discipline but unable to reconcile its divisions. This approach risks further alienating members and voters who see such tactics as heavy-handed and indicative of a leadership out of touch with its democratic base. The cross-party nature of the No Confidence initiative signals a rare moment of unity against Starmer, transcending traditional political boundaries and underscoring the depth of dissatisfaction with his Brexit strategy. The rebellion is driven by a shared conviction among MPs that the leadership's approach represents not just a policy failure, but a fundamental betrayal of the Brexit mandate and the will of millions of voters. This sentiment is echoed loudly in public demonstrations and media coverage, painting a picture of a political crisis that extends beyond Westminster's walls and into the heart of British society. Nigel Farage and Reform UK have capitalised on this chaos, positioning themselves as the true defenders of Brexit and British sovereignty. Farage's media blitz and pointed accusations of betrayal have resonated with disillusioned voters who feel let down by mainstream parties. Reform UK's rising poll numbers reflect a broader realignment of political loyalties in the post-Brexit era, with many voters seeking alternatives to established parties perceived as failing to uphold Brexit's promises. This surge poses a direct threat to Labour's electoral prospects and challenges the broader political equilibrium in the UK. The no-confidence vote, while a parliamentary procedure, symbolises a deeper contest over the future direction of the country and the legitimacy of its leaders. The stakes are high, and the outcome could precipitate not only a change in leadership, but also a reconfiguration of the UK's political landscape, potentially leading to early elections and intensified debates over Brexit's legacy. As this crisis unfolds, the public's patience is wearing thin. Trust in politicians has reached historic lows, and many citizens view the deal and Starmer's handling of it as emblematic of wider governmental failures. The growing sense of betrayal, particularly among Brexit voters who feel their voices have been ignored or reversed, fuels social unrest and political volatility. The protests planned in key coastal areas are likely only the beginning of broader grassroots movements, demanding accountability and a return to the promises that defined the Brexit referendum. Media narratives increasingly frame the crisis as a pivotal moment for the UK's sovereignty and democratic integrity, with international observers closely watching the fallout and its implications for UK-EU relations. In this environment, Starmer's leadership is under unprecedented scrutiny, with critics questioning whether he can effectively navigate the treacherous waters ahead, or if his political career will be defined by this moment of dramatic collapse. The economic outlook further complicates the situation. The deal's ramifications for trade regulations, market access and industrial policy have raised alarms among business leaders and economists. The potential for regulatory divergence with the EU, constrained by the deal's terms, could hinder the UK's ability to pursue independent trade agreements and economic strategies tailored to national interests. This has sparked debates about the long-term viability of the deal and its capacity to deliver on promises of prosperity and sovereignty. The political instability itself threatens to unsettle markets and investor confidence, creating a feedback loop of uncertainty that could exacerbate economic challenges. In this context, the no-confidence vote is more than a political event. It is a flashpoint with profound consequences for the UK's future trajectory. Ultimately, the crisis surrounding Keir Starmer's leadership and the Brexit deal is a microcosm of broader tensions in British politics, the struggle between promises made and promises broken, the clash of national sovereignty with international cooperation, and the volatile dynamics of a deeply divided electorate. How this drama unfolds will not only determine the fate of a political leader, but also shape the course of the UK's post-Brexit identity and its relationship with Europe and the wider world. As the no-confidence vote looms, the nation watches, with bated breath, awaiting a resolution that could redefine the political and social fabric of Britain for years to come. The fallout from Keir Starmer's controversial Brexit deal continues to escalate, exposing fault lines that extend far beyond the immediate political battlefield. As the no-confidence vote approaches, the gravity of the situation becomes increasingly apparent, not just for Starmer personally, but for the future of the Labour Party and the United Kingdom's place on the global stage. Starmer's leadership, once regarded as a beacon of hope for many within Labour and beyond, now faces unprecedented scrutiny and opposition from multiple fronts. The allegations of betrayal strike at the heart of the Brexit promise, a defining moment in modern British history that reshaped politics, identity and sovereignty. Many voters who supported Brexit feel abandoned by the very party that pledged to respect their mandate. This sense of abandonment has transformed into outright fury, driving a surge of disillusionment that threatens to upend long-standing political loyalties and power structures. Within the Labour Party, the atmosphere is charged with tension and uncertainty. The no-confidence vote reflects a deeper crisis of confidence in Starmer's ability to steer the party through turbulent waters. Senior Labour figures and backbenchers alike are grappling with the implications of a deal that appears to undermine the party's core values and promises. Some members fear that the concessions made in the deal will irreparably damage Labour's credibility with Brexit-supporting voters, who are increasingly turning to Reform UK and other Eurosceptic alternatives. The threat of deselection against MPs who oppose the leadership signals a party at odds with itself, struggling to maintain unity amid growing dissent. This internal strife mirrors the broader political instability gripping the country and highlights the difficulties of managing a coalition of interests in a deeply divided society. The political ramifications extend well beyond Labour's internal struggles. Conservative MPs have seized upon Starmer's missteps to mount a fierce critique of his leadership and the Brexit deal. The deal's extension of EU fishing rights until 2038 has become a rallying point for Conservative opposition, symbolising what many see as a surrender of British sovereignty and economic opportunity. Coastal communities, traditionally a key battleground in British politics, have become flashpoints of resistance, with fishermen and local activists organising protests and vocally opposing the deal. The symbolic weight of these protests underscores the emotional and economic stakes involved, as fishing represents not only a livelihood, but a cultural identity for many of these regions. This grassroots anger has translated into political pressure, with Conservative MPs calling for swift action and accountability from the government. The economic impact of the deal adds another layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. Business leaders and economists have expressed concern over the implications of renewed EU regulatory influence, particularly in areas such as food standards, animal welfare, and trade. The reintroduction of European Court of Justice oversight is seen by critics as a rollback of the sovereignty that Brexit promised to restore. This legal dimension raises questions about the UK's ability to chart an independent course in global trade and regulatory policy, potentially limiting the government's flexibility to pursue new agreements or innovate domestically. The deal's alignment with EU defence initiatives, including cooperation toward a European army, has also alarmed defence experts and politicians wary of ceding control over national security decisions. These economic and strategic concerns compound the political challenges facing Starmer and his government, creating a multifaceted crisis with no easy solutions. Public opinion has become increasingly volatile in the wake of the deal's announcement. The perception of betrayal is widespread among Brexit supporters, many of whom feel that their vote has been disregarded or reversed. Nigel Farage's vocal opposition and Reform UK's surge in popularity reflect this growing disenchantment. Farage has positioned himself as the unwavering champion of Brexit's original vision, leveraging media platforms to highlight every aspect of the deal that contradicts promises made during the referendum campaign. His rhetoric, branding Starmer as a closet Europhile and Reform UK's Employee of the Month, resonates with a segment of the electorate hungry for accountability and authenticity. This dynamic threatens to reshape the UK's political landscape as traditional party loyalties shift and new alliances form around issues of sovereignty and national identity. The no-confidence vote itself has become a symbol of this broader political upheaval. What began as a parliamentary procedure has evolved into a referendum on leadership, vision, and trust. The cross-party nature of the rebellion against Starmer reveals a rare consensus that transcends party lines, united by a shared conviction that the Brexit deal represents a fundamental failure of leadership and principle. The political establishment's attempts to frame the deal as a diplomatic victory have largely failed to convince the public, who remain sceptical of the claimed benefits. Instead, the deal is widely perceived as a capitulation that sacrifices hard-won independence for fleeting political convenience. This perception fuels a broader crisis of confidence in politicians and institutions, exacerbating social divisions and uncertainty about the UK's future direction. Grassroots activism has emerged as a powerful force in this turbulent political environment. Protests in fishing communities and Brexit heartlands are gaining momentum, reflecting widespread frustration and anger. These movements are not merely reactive, they are driven by a desire to hold leaders accountable and to reclaim the promises made during the Brexit referendum. The involvement of ordinary citizens in these protests signals a deepening engagement with political processes and a rejection of perceived elite betrayal. Media coverage has amplified these voices, contributing to an increasingly polarised public discourse that frames the Brexit deal as a defining issue of national sovereignty and democratic legitimacy. Looking ahead, the political stakes could be